Hello, this is about the body dumping spots of Billy Grasso and of a serial killer, and where and how, for example, a Faenza family and a Fazina family are recorded, confessed, and demonstrated confirmed by courts and by police forums. Rolls with them with other natures of predicate acts and with uses of them leading up to and since the World Trade Center attack. These are also people involved in intercities with the locations next to the body dumping spots that are being and having been involved with identity thefts and frauds, also in the form of where and how investigators, and people who have to vet, who's telling truth and who have to make uses of other people's names as trained, originally and still by a method, not just by America as America, but by a method that was left entrenched by our founding parents to demonstrate the identity of the surface values of the Constitution abridged, and all pretending other by a breaching method. So there are a whole bunch of names from my town, 2-3 towns over from New Britain, Connecticut, where Central Connecticut State University, where all the universities and colleges, including fire and medical campuses, EMS campuses, private campuses, database relationships, private, all forms of them. There are treatments of positive and negative roles in this method that knew that our founding parents didn't have free speech. It knew that what they were trying to leave to heal humanity, what other founding parents of other modern nations were trying to counter to, already forced to counter through uses of other nations, also victims, individually grouped and together. No one was realizing, everyone was defending and valuing more and more, being and having been made individually grouped and together, tactically ulterior from how we are supposed to be, where and how there's a perfect value progression, which is the phenomenon of the perfect science, which is a phenomenon of conjunction not only to all questions as the value of all answer /s, but as the increasing value of that. So, for example, downtown Hartford, Connecticut, there's the state capitol. And right in view of that, northeast, and it's shadow, when the shadows point at about 1 o'clock in the day, 12:30, it's pointing over to a building. Now there's a John Mann who said years ago, he's one of the people involved sequence shifts with interbranch and foreign. This is where they keep all victims as victim predators. Where he came up through schools and programs with kids that were involved with data racketeering, identity theft, fraud, sequence shifts, involved with methods that exploit the identity of the ground locations, where and how the investigators, in relationship to bad things that really need to be countered, those bad things are maintained by a method that keeps the overt criminal enterprises, the private ones, the branches of government individually grouped together, needed to hide the same sequence as finite active progressive lies, and identity thefts and fraud styles roles, which is simultaneously treatments of positive and negative. Every time our government, fake sides of parties pretend politics are politics, as victim predators with delusions too, because they came through schools like this. Real justice must satisfy all appearances of real justice. quote, real justice must satisfy all appearances of real justice, unquote. That's what my father told me Marbury versus Madison means. See, but the Constitution, free speech means free speech. Doesn't mean an amendment. It means equality of fact, cheap in nature. See, that is not exploiting, for example, why and how they have readings of statutes where they say where and how people can be sued and some people and they cannot. But leaving out exceptions in exception nature. Where and how, for example, the quote, the right to lie, unquote, is recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed. Being and having been involved with directors of the FBI, directors of other agencies, easily discernibly since founding, though, in many ways. Not just with physical delusions, but with rules. Rules, racketeering methods worse than war crimes. Subtle, though. It's all fact, cheap nature oriented. All rules with the instances oriented. Those instances were set up by a method that knew it could get every modern nation to be the phenomenon as identities of the ground, locations, areas, and states, blaming other things, others themselves, for the real causes of negative value, nature, progressions, acts, and natures. Acts like predicate acts. Natures like criminal insidiousness natures. Wrongdoers, wrongdoing. So that was extended, and they have needs to have people, of course we need to value firefighters. We need to value EMS. We need to value doctors, real doctors. Not real doctors in collusion with the fake ones, using the databases to fabricate conversations with people. And such is used to most further the drugs problems and uses of the drugs problems missed but recorded. And the reason it's missed because they've been the intelligence community, the quote intelligence community unquote, for example, quoting Phil Mudd or Jim Shudo with CNN or other intelligence people. In other words, there are a whole bunch of people from Central Connecticut. I don't know the Kevin Caron and Mike Caron. In other words, in the only context they could pretend I'm not telling the truth about that, they could only do it with passions and emotions real fast because they were involved with the creation of instances to make it look like other. At a park near me through time in Wethersfield, and their involvements with the database, on and off campus database. I never had a class with them. Someone put them next to me, two twin brothers, Kevin Caron and Mark Caron. Never had a class with them. They're recorded involved with programs with the kids, directors, campus people associated with database relationships private also. Where and how those original physical delusions and are relevant with the stayed ones. And for example, relationship to witch trials and where and how they have opinions and convictions and physical delusions tied to the witch trials location right where George Washington had to come to sleep to meet with the French general to secure the counter-extortion of that which he had to leave with slavery entrenched in Wethersfield, Connecticut, in North America and in South America, sickly distinctly. And where and how they didn't have free speech to detail that for us. So they left us means for correlation that are taken away from us, sickly distinctly in the past, sickly distinctly through time, and sickly distinctly now, effectively keeping now from discerning each one, how it's sickly non-distinctly. There's a breaching method being applied, and it's completely syntax-oriented. Therefore, it is completely functions-oriented, and it is databases-oriented. but that is the maintained outcome from off campuses. But that has been a maintained outcome on and off campuses, on and off homeschool locations, where and how there is complete possession of each age of correlation natures, treatments of positive and negative. Correlation. Increasingly, those are reliant upon. And as sense and sensibilities, quote, sense and sensibilities, quote, unquote, not even having read that book or that contains that phrase or entitled that by Jane Austen. And so we come to, before you can understand an age of literature properly, you have to understand the breaching method that was, is, being, and having been applied since before everyone was born. There was the complete syntax, captivation, shock, awe, victim-predator reactions, blaming other things other than themselves for the real cause of slavery. Money didn't cause the motivate slavery to be further like this. Money is not, and whatever is not furthering the drug trades the most. They're using truth for lies. The programs and the trainings of everyone themselves, because that defended them, it's themselves. Everyone's increasingly, those styles of fake integrity, increasingly reliant upon contrasts with other nations, other names, other information sources, other identity ground relationships to define identities, their own and other people's. And identity is a simultaneous relationship to what is positive and negative simultaneously. Because all things are in demonstration per science, actually with integrity. So we have the finite prevented. We have correlation, short words, prevented increasingly. And increasingly that makes the revelations increasingly self-valued by people pretending blamed on other things other than themselves, like politics, with physical delusions, which would have been revealed, which are evidence themselves, where and how they had slavery as a subject. For example, that was employed as a subject to keep what is off campuses effectively recorded, how maintaining and having maintained self-value. Victim roles with off campuses maintained collusion with juxtaposed natures of predicate acts and handed means to blame it on other things other than themselves, already having been manifest, that also having been self-value. This is also in relationship to how we have opinions and convictions with physical delusions that would have been revealed a long time ago regarding how much it really should cost for people to afford things and like the maintenance of things. And really what taxes were about, for example. Really what the Republic is about. Really what the concentrated value of campuses are about. Which is increasingly about that identity that keeps any concentrated value increasingly, every value increasing, present everywhere else. That's why the ancients would value that we didn't agree about the name of that which inventions work in a relationship to or not. They are further positive or not in relationship to that which is a scientific value, which has to be discerned as the identity of volume we know only increases as forever nature. And as its significance, The value of sequence true, even if lied right through semi-ancient times, there were recorded self having been tactically, effectively exploited self-value, databases, illusion stacking, identity thefts and frauds rules, overt, and with physical delusions, but rules, crimes, predators, so everyone missed that part of it. Then everyone has to go home. Just like the overt criminal enterprises. They have, look up criminal enterprises, look up gangs, transnational gangs. See, they're in collusion with the branches of government, with private, and with everybody else, including killers and people next to body dumping spots. Everywhere, especially where there's investigations. There are uses of the methods bonded by a method to keep bad things happening, to keep the people doing the bad things and the people putting them away and the people holding them when they're away. Kept needing to hide the same sequence shifts, finite, active, progressive lies together, identity theft, frauds together, and or they've been torturing them to say things. The forced, tricked, hurt, persuaded to further data bases that are being used in backgrounds by the intelligence community to discredit legitimate information and critically human native, though, its way, system pure. The system that we don't have to agree about the name of to observe it. You know, but where and how. All platforms in possession of its roles with the quality of our syntax nature were our employed. To get over on correlation nature being used as evidence. There's a method to this. One method that sickly, non-distinctly hurt every age of fact-keeping nature, every country, and that made itself value to effectively exploit our syntax nature, to effectively keep. So we have to be able to report through all that, through the branches of government individually grouped to get methods that are simultaneously in collusion with overt criminal enterprises and with private ones, and with databases, relationships further. And so everyone goes home. This is already having be exploited. It's a method that exploits. It's like just like magicians have things that do things that could amaze us and make us think we see what we don't. And you know, people could do that. People did that to get over on everyone effectively. We're in a semi-ancient trap. We have to understand, just like a microscope only works because of its identity of relationship to nature's actual value progression system. So a microscope only works because of its identity relationship. It works off of principles that work in its identity of relationship to itself, and the value of that is relevant to our short words. It is increasingly prevented by people pretending not to understand. And when they bring up these subjects, where they want to have debate about things, where they pretend in courts and in police forums that they're making proper subjects treatments, when consciously they are leaving out sequence shifts, when they are leaving out identity thefts and frauds that are through time connected. It's a method that does it where the people can't respond, and or they have to ignore it. And everyone is forced to speak through other people and let them paint whatever they want into records fake. And they forge names and switch the names interbranch. There are hundreds of other nations involved with this. Nations that don't even like each other, that are in collusion through what is manifest with our syntax nature. And with all that is too, the identity theft / fraud method that effectively keeps the overt criminal enterprises private ones, and the interbranch self-valuing more and more. How from off campuses they're influenced, tricked, hurt, persuaded to further what they don't like. But it's the quote perfect world, unquote, is recorded used and having been used through time, where and how Connecticut State Police, interstate state police, military police, their family members, their neighbors, foreign military, a whole bunch of countries with their kids shared here and there. We have roles with what has that as employed by a breaching method, where that employed the sense and sensibilities of everyone to pretend self-value and to actually self-value, even not realizing, like when Native Americans blame things on the white man. Then the debates about that, not because they're blaming on someone else. This is not to say, oh, that's wrong against the white people because you're blaming on white people. No. This is to say now the defenses of that are simultaneously preventing anyone from speaking about the breaching method. The method itself that is preventing the Native Americans, short words and the protractions of the revelations connected to it that are native pure. And it's preventing every person, because the sciences are native pure. The human, how we are individual grouped and together by its system, ages of correlation, natures of simultaneously value. Positive or negative effects in the future are here now. People say, "Oh, it's on the future." People with a theater was this to each podium in collusion with that which exploits. So what is manifest are styles of combat to all that involved, with blaming and having blamed, and having been blamed on other things, others themselves, the real causes of negative value nature progressions here, there, everywhere. Everyone blaming other things, others themselves, for what a breaching method is consciously maintaining, that the outcomes, undiscerned, effectively, shock and awe, and torturing people, is on front, pretending if someone doesn't know the name of which amendment is what amendment. We have trick natures of law that are trained to use things like that, knowledge to get over on correlation nature. We have people simultaneously, they have methods of pretending to care about things like religion, with physical delusions too. So when anyone tries to make any kind of opinion that's not sequence shifting, they're even sequence shifting with the beginning of the Old Testament. And worse than dishonestly. See, this is set up because they use all they use all identity the ground locations, treatments of positive and negative. They have Facebook employed, where sequence shifting styles needing to pretend their integrity of positive and negative treatments. There are also styles like blaming the perfect world, having been forsaken, so only known forsaken, on other things other than self. Specifically to offensively make opinions when people are saying there's child abuse acts. They're preventing acts from being subjects while they are stacking acts in collusion with that, like forging names and switching names. There are female black and white judges per them, per our leaders that tell us to refer to people black and white, which you have to make distinctions. But they also have remote uses of their roles with inter and intra campuses phenomenon, like through time, with the people next to with the people with the Aiello family. Aiello family said there's a Christopher Cullen. He's one of the people involved with prosecutors and judges in foreign countries, in overt criminal enterprise, people involved with wire crimes, people involved with AT&T, and things like that. But identity thefts and frauds. I don't know him. One time when I was in middle school, he was recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, involved with that, with people that were involved with lie progressions, because that started when I was in grammar school. People were attaching me to fake locations, fake ties to themselves, and they were stacking predicate acts into database roles, collusion with it. But that was through other motivations, natures, needs, roles, like medicines, racketeering, and drugs crimes with kids that judges and doctors have, attaching them to fake. They have the roles with investigators, simultaneously at the same time, sequentially. They made time, like through time when I was a kid and then as an adult. There's people with the name Joey Quest involved with locations at the end of the World Turnpike and on and off Trinity College and on and off CCSU that are involved with various courts and judges and prosecutors retired and standing, their family members involved with identity thefts and frauds with them. That's identity thefts and frauds overtly when they bring up Jim Crow laws and where that criminal incompetence was as being and having been employed. That shock and awe was being and having been employed. The reactions to it, creating and valuing the shock and awe in age of fact-cheating nature, because of how the short words and the revelations are offensively prevented in relationship to the different identity ground insights that can be used. Negative things can be used and positive things can be used to see things to discern things that other people don't realize. Like, for example, in relationship to those methods, where the overt criminal enterprises and the private one through time, the locations next to the campuses of each age and nature, are also with families recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, involved with investigators, standing identity the ground, locations, uses by our systems, our information systems, our data systems that are criminally foreign influence originally still. That is increasingly valuable evidence. In other words, if you're saying that, in other words, that when people make opinions about such, they demonstrate self-value when they make it wrong. They self-value criminally foreign influence premises treatments, sequence treatments, identity treatments, positive and negative treatments, finite treatments. They're preventing correlation from being used as evidence. They're offensively pretending studies are worthy where they are not, because that's one of the ways they counter where and how they keep corruption more inclined towards certain sciences while pretending other and keeping the other people polarity out and self-valued polarity out offensively. This is part of how identity of the ground locations formally are being used. But it has to do with live progressions from that, maintained, needed by a breaching method, by what already had roles with all kinds of bad things, already had the formal people involved with that and with their reactions to it, people that are trying to help the victims. They even have victims pretend they're victims as the predators, and that's why you have to understand what they're doing with the child campuses. So there's a Ray Reynolds that is recorded involved with I don't know. There's a woman named there's a guy named Kevin Harris, and there are others involved with principals of schools, with the child sex offender principals campus. It also has women principals and their family members who had conversations with other people's names in the past when they were involved with education and with their neighbors. Like they're neighbors of I believe it's a Tom O'Connor that are recorded, confessed, and demonstrated involved with people associated with Joe DeMoro and a Kerr family with houses on the street near me, and with the Wethersfield police, with people on the child sex offender registry. That has something to do also with how they're involved with Afghanistan and with uses of the crime methods with kids, with cafeterias, by knowing where they're going to be positioned and they're having timing people where they're going to walk, which is in relationship to where and how, part of what shows how they've been using investigations and investigators in crime scenes to hide their own personal groups together roles with data racketeering, identity theft, frauds, roles with that differentially influenced by the foreign, demonstrated, confessed, confirmed them roles, and by the like Russians are involved against Russians there and here, but while they're draped in the Russian flag over here, draped in the American flag over here. They want to need to have fights between people and or fake natures of relationships between people, including the people's family members. They just attach people and everyone around them to fake words, where they're being sloppy with positive and negative. It's not by accident. So there are a whole bunch of men and women associated with. There's a Savio Bajerio, who I don't know him. He sought me out with a whole bunch of others with a whole bunch of confessions. When I was a kid, tied to my neighbor, involved with them over the last couple of months, Wethersfield police, and with various courts and their family members, retired and standing, involved with the people on the other streets, involved further with the principal sex offenders campus, and with the kids of principals and of teachers. That is involved with where and how they have remote uses of the sense and sensibilities of people having been and being involved further, like with wire crime acts and methods, uses of Facebook for sexually natured and medical nature crimes with kids and with people's names. They're pretending other by picking up behavior out of sequence, by taking positions with locations, worst body dumping spots, and uses of them. Untimely deaths, uses of drugs, crimes, medicines, crimes, roles that the people are supposed to be against they have. And pretend people had fake conversations with them, fake uses of drugs. I never saw heroin, never used heroin. Could demonstrate the roles that a Leahy family has with that. And with prosecutors, retired and standing, and military police, associated also all along the road, where George Washington was forced to leave slavery, but recruit the help of the French general before they won the first part of the American Revolution. There is maintenance to the syntax racketeering means by what really was most associated with the War of 1812 besides our founders, and besides that natural unity that there was / is still the complete possession of. As such is recorded through not just Jim Crow laws and that overt before that, but responses to them now and defenses of themselves, which are defenses of premises treatments that are criminally foreign influence too long in our faces, prevented short words in their protraction, prevented counters to police forms forging and switching names. So WFSB, Fox, Connecticut News, and WTNH confirmed they have investigators and investigations and people that answer their phones that are trying to start fights with me and others because they're needed to sequence shift. Because their investigations were already used for sequence shifting through administrations as people involved leading up to the World Trade Center attack and since, involved with them with predicate acts on and off campuses, intercities, of identity thefts and frauds roles, medicines and drugs crimes roles, uses of their locations, uses of where they have it set up, where they have see no evil, hear no evil, and pretend others simultaneously. They're getting over on, Marbury versus Madison. They're pretending all justice, all appearances of real justice must satisfy all appearances of justice means be a fake theater like someone told by an investigator originally and still to pretend your integrity, but we're involved with slavery, which was criminally legalized, not just worse than war crimes method, by a method that was already entrenched. So our founding parents need us to enable the power / might of the value of the surface values of the Constitution in relationship to care for the individual first, not in the context that are sustained, where they employed exceptions in exception nature and maintain that self-value to pretend other. In other words, there's a breaching method that broke everyone, except for Marbury versus Madison, except for how the republic for which we stand had been revealed to ancients by the entire species before the sciences became criminally foreign influence. They were observing what is manifest as itself, the identity of scientific value that is distinctly, non-distinctly, and simultaneously every identity of value progression individually grouped and together. We are, as species, individuals, grouped, ages, areas, sexes, locations, species, body of volume / S. When we are positive onto those three at the same time, we are using how the ground is also distinctly, non-distinctly, and simultaneously. Distinctly, but also non-distinctly. That same identity of value progression, invisible but still discernible. The ancients would begin and stay on the invisible but still discernible. That which is increasingly self-valued, being and having been obfuscated. Means to exploit that are increasingly, effectively undiscerned by all positions of sophistication, as a pseudo-sophistication that was propagated by a breaching method that came from some ancient times since before modern nations semi-ancient religious messengers. Thank God for them. And when I say thank God for them, that is through algebraic consciousness / consciousness algebraic, where that means when someone says, this is pantheism, per Anthony Wall, YouTuber Anthony Wall. When someone says, thank God, that means you think, or the person who said that, thank God, that something is positive to sequence true, which is increasingly valued. To correlation. To correlation nature's means, inherent actively and progressively, as its own. That which caused and reveals evolution's fruits and gifts, means from nowhere. So you could put a plant in the ground and give it the perfect the elements it needs. But if you don't have the rest of the ground elements and the rest of the nature going by its system, where the identity of the ground and the identity of the ground's identity of relationship to itself, and the value of that is a subject / S inseparable from all others, with our own individuals, groups together. The ancients discerned which is that which is scientifically discernible. When humanity is in a positive value nature progression, that's that which reveals evolution's fruits and gifts, means from nowhere, means unfathomed, including especially regarding how this is fact nature oriented. See, but also per how it has to be from outside of courts, especially ones where they have streams of victims and victim predators every day, not by accident, to keep their victims as employed victim reactions, responses, all already having come through, already having been tactically self-valued, where and how the investigators are used remotely their identities of volume, where and how the overt criminal enterprises and the private ones again are kept needing to hide the same sequence shifts, find active progressive lives, uses of the houses next to the schools, uses of houses next to the and businesses next to the schools, uses of the businesses and houses and things next to the and programs and systems next to the post offices, uses of the sense and sensibilities of opinion natures of people who happen to be Democrat or Republican, where and how there were uses of words / values like politics originally instilled, where and how both parties were in collusion with that which was torturing people to pretend fake positive was other. Not just fake positive, not just criminal insidious natures of positive, archetypal criminal natures of positive, natures of positive as negative, criminal insidious natures of positive in collusion with negative treatments, in collusion with a method even worse because it exploits that from their propagated roles, all identity of the ground locations, all differences having been employed to get over on the course of difference / S, which is one scientific identity of values, identity of volumes, where volume equals value as nature / nature as value, and so can be discerned. So people want to have debates about overall things like this because they can't deal with with what is actually recorded evidence. So they have to increasingly self-value, increasingly delusions wrought rules, crimes, predators, and, identity racketeering roles, natures. Vast arrays of people that like each other and don't. That value that too, as means to pretend all that's that's the way things are. So we have people sicker than most people they put away, and they're with their sickest criminals. Same courts and police forms with a whole bunch of other nations where are kept needing to hide the same uses of those same identity ground locations with their body dumping spots. Through time, same ones evolved with recorded remote uses of methods on off the state Connecticut judicial branch offices, where they pretend to perceive things because they were already recorded, confessed, and demonstrated being and having been involved with remote uses of themselves, where wire crime action methods. There's a Chris Walters also recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed. There are people with the intelligence community and people with Washington, D.C., a bunch of ways associated with New Britain, with courts, New Britain and Hartford courts, and people on off the state of Connecticut judicial branch offices, people with that place next to the post office, and with next to the places next to the middle school, involved with medical families, various even regular doctors, involved with their databases, stacking fabricated things in. And then they switch the people involved and make fake people involved. So when investigators try to investigate things, the time treatments everyone has with their jobs, like the people with their jobs, that are the only people to help Americans originally still, every location, area, and state, criminally foreign influence, tactically criminally foreign influence, sickly, distinctly, per method effectively having employed everyone to roles blaming and other things in themselves, the cause of that, and enforcing that, like racism. This is collusion with identity thefts and frauds with the people that put them away, and the people that self-value roles with their jobs with the prisons. These are jobs with people involved with medical racketeering, identity thefts and frauds. So everyone's going to speak with sense and sensibilities, telling white lies and stuff that we are employed, being and having been employed. They're increasingly valuing having been employed. All such white lies and such like that, sense and sensibilities where people want to make statements or ask questions into things to investigate what they hear from other people, but leaving out parts. For example, that's part of the method. /S, that is where and how the branch and their kids as victims, and the overt criminal enterprises and the private ones and their kids, and the people associated with their locations, how they confess, record, demonstrate, confirm roles with identity thefts and frauds as styles of it, and where and how they prevent those methods and styles from being subject. They keep the overt criminal enterprises and they're undercover with them on Facebook, walking with people on YouTube, holding hands, saying they're Los Solitos, because they have an entrapment method where they're framing the kids to roles with criminal enterprises that are in collusion with on campuses, off campuses, already having been victim predators. That hid illusions and lies and mistreatments of finite truths, actual mistreatments of kids' names in relationship to that. And this is like a trick where they sequence shift, and they set up means to pretend other natural motivations, like, oh, I just wanted to put this one in my class, not that person. But that which is fine if they want to say that. You have to get them on paper, because that's not their only motivations. That's not the real motivations. These are people that were involved originally, and still everyone, with investigators, and vetting identities. People's communication where they were. No one wants to have that gone back and spoken about. in campuses. When in the background they're locking the people that the family members, neighbors of the people that work with the databases, like the Harris family. Now there are people from Quinnipiac College involved with, federal criminals, and people on the child sex offender registry that are involved with identity thefts and frauds, and tricks where they plant. They get people to make statements and plant evidences into databases. And they come. This is in relationship to what you see on. I don't remember where I heard it on television before though. I've repeated it a number of times. They say when there's a crime scene, people remember different things. Before that, what that was is a maintained outcome by a method that's with the grammar schools, and so Joe Aiello and others used to be friends with the house on my street that came in when I was in 4th grade, to a house that was then and is still now involved with the police chief years ago, and one now who's involved with identity thefts and frauds, sequence shifts, having officers forge and switch names, roles with uses of that, also with overt criminal enterprises, and with my neighbors on and off Trinity College and on and off CCSU, with others, with police forms and doctors involved with child sex offenders, further with the principal sex offenders campus, and with people named Phil Cololo, and with people with the name Scalora, who are involved with FBI and CIA and overt criminal enterprises with identity thefts and frauds with them, that are also in the forum /S of male crime rules, or drugs and medicines crimes with kids, criminal uses of untimely deaths, or criminal uses of locations next to the campuses. There's a CCSU magnet school and CCSU in New Britain, and people with the intelligence community and Glastonbury also recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed by DeMoros involved with intercities, predicate acts with location on campuses and off of them. Also with federal criminals before they are caught as ones that were co-defendants of former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, when he was in a 2006 case, part of a case that was ongoing at the time of my father's death. And co-defendants in that case and their kids were involved with predicate acts, identity thefts, and frauds with the campuses I went to, with the same people involved with. Like, so there's a Heather Hansen, there are a bunch of Joe DeMoros, people and their mother involved with predicate acts on Central Connecticut State University with police from off the campus and on that campus. And they're also recorded, confessed, and demonstrated involved with child campuses in my town, grammar school ones through time, a middle school, and a high school, with private school kids involved with the identity thefts and frauds, where they put syntax illusions, where they bring them onto the campuses, where they're creating criminally and more contexts where no one can speak properly about what happened, or if they speak, they get punished for that. And that's already demonstrated to them. Per rolls with that method that was whipping people in Hartford with the slavery, in Wethersfield with the slavery, and it had a sickly, distinctly other method of training the sense and sensibilities of the white people and of the Native Americans to their sick theater, fake sides of Native actual for everyone, where and how it's the individual, group, and species. See, but we are prevented free speech offensively by the agencies that remained originally and still evidence racketeering natures, delusions raw, rules racketeering predators. They have ones with the agencies with badges have roles with all kinds of psychology delusions and theories and uses of styles of pretending other by quoting theories and research. That is delusions raw itself and criminally foreign influence. For example, in polling of presidential elections, where the presidents themselves are used remotely, where and how their initial premises are prevented, WFSB also is confirmed that their roles with Fox Connecticut News also confirmed. Fox Connecticut News and WFSB and WTNH next to the New Haven FBI the office. They play in Wethersfield, Connecticut, softball together a bunch of times. And on a park that is involved with predicate acts with them, with the principal sex offender, and with more then and now, involved with wire crimes, and involved with the Wethersfield police chief and a Dillon family, and more people with the name McGee, and their kids, involved with men and women with badges and doctorates and psychology and stuff like that, foreign and domestic, involved with identity thefts and frauds, physical delusions, fabricating audio and video, with locations, with their own locations formerly, with their neighbors, people associated with the groups they hang around with. This is syntax oriented. This is an identity theft fraud method that increasingly has the police forms we have shared in collusion with each other, so they pretend to by pretending to be against racism or prejudice. Now this is what is recorded, but it is recorded in the form of how they're stacking fabricated things into databases and leaving no means to counter verbally. And all exceptions in exception nature are in demonstration of the same thing. And the prisons associated with these courts involved leading up to the World Trade Center attack in that context, and since interstates from Connecticut, interbranch, intercities, through time. There are people with Old Saybrook and are people with Sound View through time recorded and confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, involved with our people that identity thefts and frauds, who set up instances in the past that I don't know at all, ones that pretended to know me, that are involved with the intercampuses, relevant roles with the principal child offender. There's a Joshua Julian with the Facebook, with the judges and courts and prosecutors involved criminally, with doctors personally involved with them, layers of sickness, while they've been putting people in jails. The people with those jails and the stewards of those jails and training of the such, in the military, foreign and domestic, with locations next to Trinity College. There are a whole bunch of people recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed through time roles with judges and prosecutors and people with children, with medicine and drugs crimes, where they're identity thefts and frauds. They create instances because they were involved with programs where they use the right to lie, where they don't have the right to lie, whether they realize or not. To an extent, they don't realize. So they keep it increasingly valued. Keep that increasingly valued. These are people also on off medical locations all along roads and routes where they set up instances in the past so they could keep complete possession of the people associated with the data streams, communications, and sensibilities, treatments of facts, treatments of how it is overtly discernible how investigators were employed by a breaching method, where and how which trials become a subject and stay a subject that is inseparable from where and how George Washington had to come here to secure the counter extortion method that began but never was completed, because it was taken over by the extortion method that was already entrenched, that it just converted everyone to roles with and took everyone to screening roles simultaneously, pretending to care about Marbury versus Madison. So instead they pretend real justice must satisfy all appearances of real justice, means that fake theater that people are reliant upon by the media, forced to use other people's information and or to use the investigations themselves for more sequence shifts. They pretend they use the crime method with prosecutors and judges involved with the media fake news, using quote fake news, unquote, quoting President Trump. So then they say, with no evidences. And see, and then if he uses those evidences, everyone starts talking about it in ways that focus only on America's roles. See, these are America's former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, Wethersfield's